Good evening. Welcome to our Sukkah. It's the fifth night of Sukkot, the night of the visitation of Moshe Rabbeinu. First night, of course, we had Avraham, then Yitzhak, and then Yaakov, and then Moshe, our own. And so we are working our way through the Sfirot, and each of these great tzaddikim became the people where that light could appear in its most revealed form. In other words, a human being is a channel of God's light. But, well, constantly we're blocking the light, unfortunately. But the person who gets to the level where he doesn't block the light, he becomes the chariot of that light. And these great tzaddikim that we call out in our prayers and their merit all the time, they did that work and they became those merkavot, as they're called in Hebrew, those chariots, those channels. Tonight's piece of Likutei Moharan that we're looking at is 62.5, the fifth paragraph in Torah 62. And we've been talking about the purification of speech and how that collects sparks. And then when you collect sparks of speech, of Kedusha, and you draw people closer to you, because your speech contains little capsules of desire, pure desire. Not desire for anything in this world, the desire to be attached to the source. And now he's going to tell us about elevating those sparks, because it's not enough just to draw them to you, you have to elevate them to a higher level, back to where they came from. So listen closely, there's some more esoteric material here, but again, we're going to bring it down. Because when we get a handle on it, the mysticism makes sense. And we take the mystery out of mysticism. And the Rebbe begins, La'alot nitzutei hadibur, to elevate the sparks of speech. Tzarich letanit, well, what we need is a fast. Now, some people like to fast. Some people don't like to fast. Some people like a short fast. Some people can fast a long time. But why a fast? What does not eating and drinking have to do with elevating the sparks of speech? Now remember, the sparks are units of desire. That's your desire put into your words. When you want to speak, right? When you want to wink, right? When you want to speak, that desire to speak is coming from your soul. And depending on the refinement of your soul, so too will be the content of your speech. And if your speech is refined enough, guess what? Those little sparks of God's desire will shine through it. And you will gather more sparks, the sparks of the people around you. And you'll start to say things that they're thinking. You'll start to tell people their dreams before they dream them. Or your speech will cause them to say, I was just thinking of that. Or I just learned that. Because you see, your speech has been purified to pull the sparks from them. And the channel is made whole and stronger and greater, all for the glory of the one who created this awesome system. But for this, the Rebbe says, first, to elevate the sparks in speech, we need a fast. Now, the idea of a fast, the simplest idea, of course, of a fast is to remove the external desires of this world. That when you don't have too much power in your body, you're not going to want all the other things the body wants as much. So the not eating and drinking weakens the body's desires for sex, money, glory, rock and roll, etc. If you get what I mean. So fasting is a part of religion. It is not the center of religion. It is a form of affliction. But it's the point of the affliction is to weaken the physical so that the spiritual, your speech, will shine. It says, "Mederach pisham avonoteihem yit'anu." King David said, from their way of sins, of crimes, and from their sins, Yitanu, they will fast. We know that this is, one of the things that we have to do on the fast days in general, but especially if we have, what we call here sins and crimes. Vazai, and then listen to what happens next when you do the fast. And you cleanse yourself of those external forces that make us want to do the wrong things, or just make us want to eat or drink too much. Yishlach devaro, God sends His word. And what does that mean? God sends His word. Well, His word is the ultimate truth. It's the truth for you every moment, and me and every other person on the planet. And it could be the truth for just today, or the truth for 50 more years, or not even come true until 200 years. See, that's the nature of prophecy. We're receiving things from above time. Now, they might work their way into time where we are after a long time. Or they might be waiting just to come out at the right time so someone needs to here's what they need to hear. And that's Yishlach Devaro. He sends His word out. Now, this is a very important point in all of spiritual practice, especially for people who want to be attached to God, because we have to understand when we have a good thought, it's not necessarily our thought. And we don't want to take ownership of something that's not ours. And we don't want to claim that something is ours when it's not ours. And it tells us here, Yishlach, God sends the word. You don't have to worry about what you're going to say. See, most people, when they talk in public, the first thing they worry about is, what am I going to say? Number one fear before death and taxes is public speaking. Because really the number one fear is public shame. And there's nothing more shaming than, of course, when you get gobbly-gooble in your speech, like some world leaders nowadays seem to get mixed up with their words. At least they say words that I never learned, but that's okay. The point is, though, God sends the words. We don't need to worry about what we're going to say, because we trust that if we're saying the right thing, He's going to send the next thing and the next word and the next sentence and the next idea, because that's the way Torah is. But we have to remove the external forces, and that's what the fasting does. And that true speech is the elevation of the capsules of His desire in the words. Ki ikar tikun adibur, because the essential repair of the speech, hu aidei atanit. He repeats the idea. Ki ikar yenikat akilipot, because the essential nursing of the other side, the forces of negativity, darkness that want to hide Hashem, they need life force to exist. And where do they get it? Well, they get it from us, but they can't get it from all of us. They can only get it from the outer side, the back side, what we call the external forces, the klipot, the shells, not the light itself. But listen, the light that the other side wants is only from outside, the other side of the kedusha, the other side of the light. Once you know God's will, you're attached to the light. And once you don't know God's will, well, then the other side can jump right in there and start messing with your mind about what's really true. And this is one of the problems that people have in the spiritual path in general, is they'll tell you that it's from God, and what I'm telling you is from God, and, you start to get like, you want to walk away, you want to run away. Because a person doesn't need to invoke that his words are from God. Either they are or they aren't, and you will know by their truth. But the ones that used to stand on the soapboxes in Speaker's Corner, in Hyde Park, in London, they had no problem telling everybody that they were speaking for God. The problem was God really sending them? And I went over there as a teenager, and I was like, I think I'm going to back up. These guys are ferocious with their claims. But the real person who speaks the true word of Hashem does not need to claim anything. it becomes apparent in your heart, his truth. But the klipa are going to come, and they're going to not be able to handle the light. Listen to what he says, Ki mipnei hakedusha efshar lehem linok. The external forces cannot take from your light. In other words, when you're shining God's light, it can't come in there and tell you to go do some sin. Because that's what the klipa want. They want to grab power from you. The external forces want to make us do things that give them our power. Like all these scammers online. What are they after? Your money. What does your money represent? It represents your effort in all different fields of endeavor. So that's a good example, actually. These scammers, they're out there trying to get some of your power. But if you're in the light of truth, they can't get near you. And your light of truth, remember, has been refined by the elevation of your speech, by the fast. Because when you fast, again, you're removing those external forces that make you want too much to eat, too much to drink, too much in your wallet, too much, in all the other categories of life. And the Rebbe says, because Muhammad bihurut or because the brilliance of the light of holiness they can't take. That's, by the way, the reason we say God's names in the prayers. We say God's names in the blessings. Because his names are light, and they push away the negative forces. That's why it's so important we say the words nicely, as clearly as we can, with the best accent you can render, to put out the negative forces with the light of God's names. Now this is a fascinating idea. Sometimes, he tells us, sometimes the external forces are given your power from above, against your will. Why would he want to do that? Mechuvan koach linok mipnei kedusha, and they are intended to take some of the light of the holiness that they can't handle because it's too bright. Why would God want to do that? Rabbi Nachman tells us the secret. It's only that they take too much whiskey, too much light from the soul, and it burns them. Now, what does this mean? This is like the verse the King Solomon said, Shalat Adam ba'Adam Laralo. The time that a man is given power over another man, Laralo, and it will be bad for him. What does that mean? That means that a good person could be taken captive by a bad person in order that God has a way of doing bad to the bad person and good for the good person. For example, the classic Torah example, when Pharaoh, the chief mystical monster of Egypt, the magician of all sorcerers, who used to bathe in blood to get the power from the blood. Mongolians used to drink blood to get their way across the steppes. It's a long way from China to Europe. So Jews don't drink any blood because it's a sore, because the soul of the animal's in the blood. That's why we have proper kosher shechita, because we don't want the blood that contains the soul in us. It's not for us. But the Mongolians, they were savage warriors and they needed extra energy. But there is a time where Pharaoh, that evil guy, he kidnapped Sarah Imenu. Now that doesn't look good. The evilest guy's taking captive the princess and wants to molest her. How can that be good? Well, because it sets up God to do a miracle for the Jews that makes Pharaoh understand who he's dealing with. And the affliction of the boils that afflicted Pharaoh and all his people made them realize, whoa, I think I did the wrong thing here with this woman. And God also appeared in Pharaoh's dreams. The woman you took, don't touch her, don't touch her. So that's an example of this verse. Et asher shalata adam ba'adam. The time that a man rules over a man. In this case, it's the man ruling over Sarah and, of course, Avraham Avinu. Le ra lo, for the ra of Pharaoh, because from all this, the whole story unraveled, and Pharaoh gave Avraham tremendous wealth just to leave Egypt. And you see it so many times. You look at your life. Bad things happen and good things happen after. Now there's reasons for this. The number one reason is God gives us merit by going through the suffering. And the merit of the suffering is the reward that comes at the end. Now, nobody wants suffering to begin with. Unless you're already at a tzaddik of the highest level where you already process the energy so fast you don't even feel the pain, or if you do feel it, it's gone because you've already sweetened it in your acceptance of God's judgment. So when you see a bad person ruling a good person, think twice, think three times. Because it's going to be bad for the one who's ruling. I think we're seeing a good example of that in Ukraine right now. We'll figure it out when it's over. But it doesn't look so good for the ruler. And all the desires. Now, ta'ava is not like your need for food and drink, your need to have money in your pocket, your need to have holy relations, when you need to do that. Ta'avot are the excesses of desire. It's the lust for the lust's sake. Okay? And all of them are aspect of the external forces because they're not here to help us get close to God. Too much of something will not get us close to God. It will get us further from God. Ki atavot hem motorot, and they're called the external forces, the excess forces. Now, earlier, if you look back on YouTube a little bit, or on our Patreon lists, you'll see that we did a whole class about the excess forces. Excess means we're getting more than we need. And that's the illusion of man. A billionaire needs more. Ohev kesef lo yispa kesef. King Solomon said that too. Right? If you love money, you'll never be satisfied with it. Rotzei mea? Wait, it says in the Talmud, how do they put it? Ba'ala mea, rotzei mea. The person who has 100, well, he wants 200. I know people that had 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars, and they were thinking about that 100 million mark. Like, what? Can't you get happy first? Ki below ta'avot yachol haguf litkayem. And Rebbe Nachman tells us another secret. We can get by on the minimum. We can get by on just what the body needs and not more. We don't need too much to eat and too much to drink, etc. So the fast is really to bring down the lust of food, not to remove the desire for food. Desire for food is a good thing because it tells you what you need when you need it. You never notice how your kids want to eat certain things and not other things, but a lot of times that has to do with the balance of vitamins in their blood. But don't argue with your kids about it. Don't try to tell them the chemistry because you're going to get in trouble. And these excesses are more than what we need for our body to stay healthy and alive on this planet, so that we can drive them around safely, of course. Well, come on, klipot hem motorot, and these klipot, again, they're this idea of the excess. Anything in excess is from the other side. Ki ikar eno ela apri, because what we're really after is just the fruit. We don't need the rind. We don't need the peel. We need the fruit. I was once on a bus in Greece, and I was running out of money and food, and I decided I'm going to eat the klipa, the peel of a grapefruit. Ever try that? I thought, well, at least it'll give me a little more material before I get back to London on that old magic bus. But and the truth was, you can digest grapefruit rind. Now, I'm not recommending this. Some people say, well, there's a lot of vitamins over there in that grapefruit rind. Well, okay. I have memories. But the truth is, there was a sense of satisfaction. Or maybe it was just the satisfaction of not caring about what you eat. The rabbis say in the Talmud that people who are picky about their food, their life is not really a life. Because they're never really happy with what they have. But we're after the pri and the klipa, which is that rind, and motorot, they're the excess around it. Now, when the bad thing happens, which is when those tavot overpower a person, that's a sign that the negative forces have overpowered the holiness. So you see, we need a certain amount of army to take on the other army. And if our army of holiness, those lights, those capsules of God's desire, are weak, then the other side will attack us. And that's dangerous. We don't like that. Okay? So this war of the klipot, it's not just happening in our stomach, in our heart, in our eyes. It's even happening in our speech. How do you see that? Well, I see it like when I try to speak and nobody listens. That's a sign that I shouldn't speak. Because why do we speak except to be heard? And if we're not heard, it means that people are somewhere else. And they don't need to hear what Avraham Shira has to say. Because they're in their own thoughts with their own speech. But sometimes we get this desire, I gotta speak, I gotta tell them the truth, and you get this power. That gevura is too much. So it's easier to talk on Facebook or nobody. They can interrupt me with little writing, but that's not too hard to deal with. No, but really, if you stop that urge to speak for the sake of somebody else's speech, you will see what I'm talking about and you will hear the purity come with your words. But it comes from being silent when we don't want to be. And that's the same thing as not eating when we want to eat. Or eat too much. Or speak too much. So I want to bless everyone with the holy Sukkot, and this sukkah is really just a symbol of an external power that we want to bring into the mind and into the heart and into the body. And that's part of the intention of the Kabbalah when we sit in a sukkah, and especially when we learn Torah in the sukkah and we share it all over the airwaves. And that's what we're trying to do here, and God has helped us so far. There's a lot of words left. But too many words, it's the same thing as too much food. Too much, not good. It's motorot, it feeds the other side. And how do you know? Because you say too much and you feel exhausted afterwards. But when you say words of Torah, the right amount, you feel alive, you feel focused, you feel good, you feel whole, complete, and you also can be silent and very happy in your silence. And happiness in our silence is a very healing thing. So God bless you all. Hag Sameach, Moedim B'Simcha. We'll see you again here on all the channels. All the best.